A great ending can immortalize a movie in the minds of moviegoers forevermore. But not all endings simply say everything that needs to be said. So with that in mind, this is Whatculture, and here are film and TV endings that get worse the more you think about them. Maddox and Trent's lives are ruined. Old. M. Night Shyamalan's Old ends with siblings Maddox and Trent being the only two surviving main characters. But the rapid aging effects produced by the focal beach have caused them to age from 6 and 11 years old respectively into middle age. And even though Maddox and Trent seemingly get malevolent pharma company Warren & Warren's operations shut down at film's end, the audience is left to ponder precisely what sort of life the duo will have from this point on. Even as Maddox insists they'll be okay in the film's final moments, will they really? They've just been robbed of around 4 decades of life, and will likely spend the rest of their days struggling to exist as young people trapped within their own aged bodies. Can they go back to school? Or are they just supposed to get jobs now despite mentally being children? How will dating work? Adjusting to their new normal would be absolute hell. And honestly, who could blame the pair if they simply fell into a depression hole for the rest of their days? With nobody else on Earth sharing their unique predicament, the support systems to reintegrate them into society are going to be basically non-existent. Best of luck to 'em, eh? Now I want to know really quickly, what is your favourite Shyamalan movie? Is it old? Is it something else? You let me know in the comment section down below.
Teen Wolf: The Wolves of War. Teen Wolf will probably never be mistaken for a great show, but it did make the most of its absurd supernatural drama to popular effect, with each season forming an epic mystery complete with well-paced reveals, violent twists, and effective red herrings. It was a massive shame then when the final season, and specifically the final episode, failed to capitalize on that potential. Titled The Wolves of War, the finale finds the McCall pack heavily outnumbered as they attempt to take down Gerard Argent and his supernatural hating army, plus the rogue creature spreading fear through town. From a premise standpoint, it couldn't be more quintessentially Teen Wolf, but it ruins everything by trying too hard to do something different and epic, ending on an ambiguous note that implies the pack are now caught in the midst of a worldwide war between the supernatural and everyone else. It's a fairly unhappy ending at its core, made all the more frustrating by various character moments being wasted. Worst of all, after 6 seasons of waiting for Styles and Lydia to end up together, we don't even get one glimpse of them as a couple once they do, which is a total waste.
The End of the Comanche, Prey 2022. The Predator prequel Prey is set in 1719 and follows the trials of Naru, a young female member of the Native American Comanche tribe struggling to be recognized as a hunter. Her co-star is the colloquially named feral predator, a subspecies of Yautja who wields primitive weaponry with a penchant for savagery over stealth. While the bad guy is a welcome addition to the canon, especially given the slightly silly giant monster hounds of 2018's The Predator, the forest hunting setup slips into a familiar groove, and by the end of the film, the alien is defeated and what remains of the tribe are free to live on. The film's reliance on the tried and tested formula, however, doesn't always land the same, and here leaves the Comanche tribe in a distinctly different position from many of the modern heroes who have faced the Yautja in other films. Though it ends on an upbeat note, with Naru taking her place as the new war chief, these events have huge ramifications for the survival of the Comanche tribe, half of which is dead, including most of the young breeding men, and Naru is taking them out of their territory into pastures new, where there are European invaders armed with rifles, muskets, and heavy artillery. Talk about out of the frying pan and into the fire.
Everybody's screwed, 2012. 2012 ends on a hopeful note as the mega tsunami's waters finally recede, and the central characters look forward to rebuilding what remains of Earth and humanity. Except it's worth taking stock of precisely what little is actually left. With only 400,000 people from around the world being allowed entry into the protective arcs before catastrophe strikes, and the global population totaling roughly 7.2 billion in 2012, that means that only 0.00005% of the human race actually remains. Add to this the various other apocalyptic events which have ravished Earth throughout the movie, including a spate of volcanic eruptions which could throw the world into a nuclear winter, and the fact that most, if not all, animal life has likely been rendered extinct, and there's surely not much of an Earth left to pick up from. Plus, with so many of the Ark's inhabitants being rich folk, are they really willing to do the back-breaking work necessary to bring humanity back from the brink? Probably not. With so much infrastructure wiped out, the human race is basically screwed. Yippee!
13 Reasons Why: Graduation. 13 Reasons Why spent its 4-season run as the most controversial show on TV, and its finale did very little to fix the horrifying drama before it. Graduation follows Claire and his embattled classmates as they finally leave high school, which should have finally put the group's trauma to an uplifting end. But unable to shed its controversial image, the finale instead leans into its implausible melodrama, killing off fan-favorite Justin just as he beat his addiction and found peace as the adopted brother of Claire. His death causes everyone to leave school heartbroken, wasting years of build-up to a happily ever after. Justin's literal character assassination is both left field and horrible, ruining 4 seasons of development in a last-ditch effort to break audiences' hearts. Worse still, his cruel demise is coupled with Jessica forgiving murdered bully and rapist Bryce for his past deeds, and even thanking him for allowing her to grow. Killing Justin and having Bryce go from unforgivable villain to misunderstood victim betrays the entire spirit of 13 Reasons Why's tale of hope, accountability, and growth, and hammers home just how terrible a show it really was.
The Smiths didn't change a thing. The Endless. Directing and acting duo Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead put out a science fiction future cult classic in 2017 with The Endless. The film sees the pair star as Justin and Aaron Smith, brothers who escape Camp Arcadia, a UFO death cult, out into the backwoods of San Diego. When a videocassette arrives with a cryptic message about an impending ascension from the cult, however, they are drawn back in and discover the camp hasn't changed in the years they've been away, and neither have the people. Nobody has aged thanks to a mysterious entity preying on them with the ability to create time loops and traps, killing people repeatedly in a single location forever. Luckily, the brothers unpack the mystery before they're caught and manage to make an escape, just narrowly outrunning the entity's sphere of influence as it tears Camp Arcadia and its inhabitants apart. We breathed a sigh of relief because at least the Smiths are safe. However, they didn't change anything and things are just as bad as when they arrived. Not only did they not save anyone, but the people who might wish for the mercy of death will soon be reset, presumably to live out a grisly fate of murder and rebirth forevermore.
Garland goes free, Con Air. Even accepting that Con Air is unapologetically camp, that ending sequence sure does make one hell of a grim suggestion. When it's revealed that serial killer Garland Green escaped recapture, and is now having the time of his life gambling at a Las Vegas casino. Sure, it's just supposed to be a fun stinger and not necessarily something that merits much additional thought, but when you consider that Green is responsible for more than 30 murders, it's totally unhinged that the story just ends with him on the loose. Some might generously argue that the film implies that Green is attempting to resist his murderous urges and turn over a new leaf. But that's not really a certainty, is it? Green is one wrong look away from potentially causing a massacre in the Vegas area, even if the film just wants us to be merely amused at the dangerous criminal making his escape.
St. Elsewhere, the last one. St. Elsewhere did 2 major things no other show achieved. It changed the face of television forever with its twisting, serialized storylines, and it ended with such a colossal WTF thud that everything beforehand was completely overshadowed. With a strong ensemble cast, including a young Denzel Washington, St. Elsewhere took place in a struggling Boston hospital and thrived as a gritty, tragic, and realistic medical drama. Dark and thrilling, the show could have ended its run as an all-timer, but at the very last second went one step too far, revealing, and brace yourself for this, that the entire series took place inside a snow globe dreamt up by a child. It's a ridiculous twist that makes everything before incredibly problematic. I mean, are we really supposed to accept that this child imagined so many harrowing incidents, including episodes about addiction, AIDS, suicide, and terrorism? It's unsavory to say the least and makes everything that came before feel incredibly icky on rewatches.
Peter's got no prospects. Spider-Man: No Way Home. The third Tom Holland Spider flick, No Way Home, took the fan service playbook and battered audiences round the head with it for 2.5 hours, dropping in just about every major Spider-Man character to date, along with a barrel load of memes, one-liners, and more Easter eggs than our entire audience could eat in a year. After accidentally fracturing the boundaries of the multiverse, Peter Parker faces his entire rogues gallery with the help of trusted allies Peter Parker, and comes out on top, with one condition: nobody from his universe can ever remember meeting him. Peter settles into his new anonymity with style, sewing a shiny blue and red suit, renting an an apartment in Midtown Manhattan, on zero income, perhaps the most science fiction element of the entire film, and swinging off into the night. But wait, he won't be able to get a job or advance in his academic career without references. How he rented that flat in the first place is anyone's guess. Not only that, none of Peter's family, friends, or acquaintances remember him, so he has no connection, common ground, or shared past with anyone or anything.
Josh and Susan have some explaining to do. Big. Big is one of the most beloved comedies of all time, and ends in bittersweet fashion with Josh being transformed back into his child form, while his adult girlfriend Susan says a tearful goodbye. But when the end credits roll, this movie leaves so many awkward implications on the table. First and foremost, how is Susan supposed to psychologically reckon with the fact that she's hung up on a man with the mind of a 12-year-old? This is the sort of thing that ruins romantic relationships for the rest of your life. Beyond that, given that Josh built a significant life for himself as an adult, isn't his adult self's disappearance going to spark quite the manhunt from basically everyone who knew him except for Susan? And of course, there's the whole matter of Josh's mother struggling with his disappearance and sudden return, all while Josh must awkwardly try to explain away his absence. Finally, the Zoltar fortune-telling machine responsible for all this is still out there, waiting to be discovered by somebody else. For all of the movie's charm, the mess that it leaves in its wake is positively nightmarish.
Castle Crossfire. During its run, Castle was a surprisingly fun rom-com mixed with a bracing procedural drama, always exciting despite its predictability. In Castle, the basic theme was that good would triumph, and that Castle and Beckett would eventually live happily ever after. With the finale though, this wholesome, almost comforting edge was stripped away, torturing and seemingly killing Castle and Beckett in one last stand against overarching villain Loxett. Crossfire ends with a jarring epilogue that finds the couple alive and well, eating breakfast with their kids. So the question is it heaven? Is it a dream shared by the two dying lovers? Or is it a lazy, happy ending squeezed in by the writers, unsure that they'd get another season? The sheer ambiguity is unlike anything the show had tried before, and the more you think about it, the more you realize that nothing could possibly make it feel right. If they're dead, it's far too unhappy, and if they survived, it's just cheap, rushed, emotional manipulation. Put simply, Castle and Beckett deserved better.
They're literally stuck in hell. The Void. Low-budget sci-fi body horror The Void sees a misfit group of survivors trapped inside a backwoods hospital as a mysterious white-hooded cult, no, not that one, descends upon them. Drawing substantially from Lovecraftian lore, the film spares none of its characters in exhibiting the worst that can happen to humanity when a portal in the basement is opened, connecting the building directly to another dimension that, for the purposes of ease and clarity, we're going to call hell. The wounded sprout extra legs, growths, and tentacles, and all manner of horrors are born out of the women. In the film's final sequence, small-town Deputy Sheriff Daniel rugby tackles the evil Dr. Powell, mastermind of the whole endeavour, into the void and triumphs over evil, saving the Earth from being subsumed by this other dimension. Daniel finds himself reunited with his deceased wife Allison on the other side, and all appears well. Except the couple are stuck in the void, which, as mentioned, may as well be hell, and they may well be immortal in this dimension, given it brought Allison back from death. If the pair are indeed stuck here for all eternity with no comfort or respite, the fact they're together is not really much of a consolation.
Snake condemns humanity. Escape from LA. Escape from LA isn't a great movie, but the ending is absolutely wild. When Snake Plissken stops the president's plan to dominate the world in the most scorched earth manner possible. The POTUS plans to use a remote satellite system called the Sword of Damocles to shut down the electronic devices of any nation hostile to the United States. But in the film's final moments, Snake hijacks the superweapon and uses it to deactivate all tech on the planet. Basically, the film ends with the world plunged back into the Dark Ages, much to Snake's perverse delight. It's a total badass ending, it must be said, if also one that makes this already dystopian world even bleaker. By robbing the world of electricity, Snake has likely condemned hundreds of millions, if not billions, to death. Both those who are reliant on power for their health and sustenance, and also by ensuring the world becomes even more of a ruthless hellscape where human life has little value. It's a damn shame we never got a third Escape From movie, even if only to see exactly what happened to humanity in the wake of Snake's actions.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer Chosen. Unlike other finales on this list, Buffy the Vampire Slayers is actually fairly awesome. Still, Chosen's flaws, easy to miss or overlooked as they may be, do make it far from the flawless vision that it could have been. For one thing, there's a massive villain problem. The Turrican, previously portrayed as indestructible vampire killing machines, become nothing more than mindless, easy to dispose of goons in the final fight, wasting half a season of intense threats. Also, the first evil, the last season's unseen big bad, can't die, and so when reformed vampire Spike gives his life to destroy Sunnydale, the first hasn't actually been defeated, because such a thing is impossible. So is Buffy's victory really a victory, or is the first destined to come back and finish the job? Also, the biggest moment of the finale, Spike's aforementioned inspirational sacrifice, was kinda nullified by the fact that producers had already let it slip that he'd be appearing in the next season of Angel, fully resurrected. It makes for an awesome moment, sure, but it doesn't quite pack the punch it's aiming for, considering it gets reversed almost instantly.
Everyone is dead. X-Men Days of Future Past. Professor X, Magneto, Shadowcat and Wolverine are among the last remaining mutants in a bleak dystopian 2023 where Sentinels have all but wiped out mutant kind. Thus they send Wolvie back in time to stop the events leading up to this future. The ploy works and a paradigm shift emerges, circumventing the creation of the Sentinels and separating these films into a new continuity from the original series, including X-Men 2 and 3. While they may have thought they were resetting the timeline, established Marvel comic and movie lore dictates that all they managed to do was create one of many alternate timelines. Something backed up by the existence of Logan, in which Wolverine and Professor X are alone in a barren 2029 where mutants have been hunted almost to extinction. Thus, while different versions of the characters get to live different lives, just about everyone from the original timeline is dead. They didn't save themselves, they just created another strand into the multiverse.
Magneto's unearned forgiveness, X-Men Apocalypse. It's no secret that Professor X has something of a soft spot for Magneto in the X-Men movies, but this is taken to basically self-parodying extremes in the risible X-Men Apocalypse. During the film, Magneto is lured over to the side of supervillain Apocalypse, and convinced to use his powers to manipulate Earth's magnetic field, causing untold amounts of damage to cities across the world. Given the glimpses of the destruction we see, it's safe to assume that Magneto caused the deaths of potentially hundreds of millions of people globally. Yet by film's end, this is bafflingly brushed under the carpet, with Xavier once again referring to him as old friend. Sure, Magneto ultimately helped the X-Men defeat Apocalypse, but can that really undo the ludicrous number of lives he snuffed out? Nor the fact he realistically would have set human-mutant relations right back to the drawing board? There's having a blind spot for your best bud, and then there's whatever the hell this self-deceiving nonsense is. You never learn, Charles.
How I Met Your Mother Last Forever. Honestly, criticizing How I Met Your Mother's controversial farewell is kinda like beating a dead horse at this point, but still, come on. How in the world can one finale mess up in so many different ways? In a series of increasingly shocking reveals, Last Forever announces that the eponymous mother is dead, and that Ted is actually telling this long story so he can get his kids' permission to ask Robin out again now that he's done grieving. The last second twist almost single-handedly destroys 9 seasons worth of character development and emotional investment, from fans eagerly awaiting for Ted and Tracy to settle down and live happily ever after. It also kind of makes Ted look like a monster, manipulating his kids to grovel for his ex yet again, just to get their permission to run off. There are other issues here, of course. I mean, spending a whole season waiting for Barney and Robin to get married just to have them divorce at the last hurdle is a major time waster, but nothing will ever sting more than Ted treating his true love like a footnote in her own story. For shame, Mosby. For shame.
Valentine's signal killed millions, Kingsman the Secret Service. At face value, the first Kingsman movie ends with the day being saved, as the villainous Richmond Valentine's plan to control the world's population with SIM cards is foiled. But let's not forget that Valentine does briefly activate the signal, which turns all the SIM card users into murderous maniacs. All as part of his plan to curb overpopulation and global warming. We're shown brief glimpses of afflicted folks suddenly turning violent, but the fallout isn't lingered on at film's end. Considering that we're briefly shown Eggsy's mother almost killing her own daughter, it's clear that the signal's brief activation would have led to a lot of the most vulnerable people in society, namely children and the elderly, being helplessly killed, many by their own families. It's fair to assume that millions would have died during the signal's brief activation, in turn putting a sizable dent in the the global population. And given that we saw numerous world leaders' heads explode in the climax, political destabilization around the world is also highly likely. Hilariously though, sequel The Golden Circle makes no mention at all of any of this. Presumably because director Matthew Vaughn is acutely aware of the many grim implications made by the first movie, but just didn't want to be a downer and linger on it. Which was probably for the best, really.